Wow. So, I mean, a lot of art students or recent graduates, one of the main key things is how do I make a living doing what I love and continue to my art practice. And that's definitely like a really difficult thing to achieve. And also, if you mentioned some health um, issues that held you back from creating. So it seems like there's a lot that went on your life in these few years. Could we just backtrack a bit and just understand? So you graduated from your Bachelor of Fine Arts at Queen's, and then why did you decide to move to London?
So I originally was moving to London for my master's, which I was going to be completing at Sotheby's in art business. I wanted to get into the art market part of the art world rather than the artistic practice. And I'm realizing that everything happens for a reason, because at this point in my life, this is what I want to be doing. I want to create. And I think if I was doing anything else, I would be, having too much exterior passion that I wasn't getting out there. And so when I moved, I was 2 weeks in London, and then I unfortunately fell quite sick. And I had actually seen you before then, and as you can attest, like I was what I felt like my normal self and was very well. And we had a lovely time going through the National Gallery. And then I was poorly very shortly after that. I woke up and I thought I had the bad flu. And when I went to hospital, I realized that it was much worse than that, and it had come on quite quickly. So I ended up having emergency open heart surgery to save my life. And I was told on Friday that I wasn't going to make it to Monday. They would have to do a surgery immediately in order to have a chance, and it would be prolonged, but get my things in order to make sure that I was able to go into this. So that was obviously calling my parents was number one priority, to see if they would to fill them in on that. And also there were decisions that needed to be made, like what type of valve I wanted, because that would impact my life with whether I was going to have children or have another surgery in my 30s. And all of this had to be made in the moment, because there just wasn't enough time. And I joke now that I only lived for the weekend anyway, so I was feeling all right. But in that moment, you aren't well, and you're not understanding the severity of the situation. So, which was in my benefit. And then coming out of surgery, it just meant that I had 2 months to recover, just because I had to be on certain medication so consistently in order to get over what I had, which was endocarditis, a very rare blood infection. And in the time that I was there, I was around a lovely community of people. I was bringing down the average in terms of the cardiac ward, and having as best a time as I could, actually, with the circumstances. So I made some friends that I currently have out of hospital, and from our time in there. And I got to finally have this perspective, because I was also really fortunate in where I Airbnb'd. When I had moved over and was seeing you, I was at a place just south of the river in Camberwell. And when I called the ambulance because of my symptoms worsening, I ended up at the nearest hospital, which was King's College Hospital. And that hospital is one of the only ones in Europe, to what I'm aware of, that have an endocarditis team that's specialized. So it's really one of the only places that could act so quickly in order to save my life. So I felt really fortunate. And yeah, so after I finally got out of my time recovering in hospital, there's still a lot of time that you need to recover with open heart surgery. And another aspect of that is mentally. So a lot of patients who go through open heart surgery, because this is your electrical outlet, your wiring heals a little bit later. It heals at different times for every patient. And so you do end up, the majority of us, I suppose, end up with some depression and anxiety and dealing with that. And so that part was actually a lot harder to recover from than the physical wound of being, open in the chest and going through the process of getting back into your physical well-being. But essentially that resulted in a year of not really wanting to create and not being inspired to get to the easel. And I struggled through a painting that I'm still working on. It's one that's probably going to be a work in progress for the rest of my life, but I enjoy it because when you visually connect with something, you have that memory. It's almost in a way like when you listen to an album and you're painting a picture, and if you look at that picture years later, you kind of remember the album that you were listening to. That was something I definitely did a lot through university. I remember every album that I was painting to these pieces. And so this particular piece that is my work in progress is just a personal development artistic creation that I will remember what I was feeling when I was painting these elements. And it's kind of like a bit of a journal. It reminds you of how far you got when you were painting a particular part of it, and you couldn't walk very far distance without needing a rest, and now I can kind of reevaluate what I'm working on. And if that makes sense, I suppose it's a bit convoluted. I think I've gone down a completely different track to your question, but essentially, I have had time where I have not felt like working at all, and it's just keeping, when we're passionate about something, I don't think that dies too easily, and it might need a little bit of time to recover itself. But when you're passionate about something, I mean, it's still in there. It just might take a little time to heal.
What a resilient story, because I can only imagine like what you went through in such a short time. I remember you had a quite stressful move to London to do your master's degree, and you got an Airbnb, and school was going to start, and then you were in the hospital, and so you stopped the master's degree, and you just took the time to recover. And I remember hearing it that you told me the doctor told you that you would only have the weekend, and so you thought, fine, I'll enjoy that weekend for what it is. But could you share a little bit more about what was your thought process like in those few days, and what was that like?
Yeah, to be honest with you, it's something that I was very comfortable throughout, and I don't know if that was because I was incredibly poorly. I've met I was doing an artist talk at the 67 Club, a wine members club in England, in London, and I was giving this talk to a group of individuals there, and I spoke. Part of this was, through my creative journey and my process. Obviously, this is a large part of it, and I was mentioning that, and a gentleman said, I'm really sorry to interrupt you, but I work in this field. I work in developing the technology for patients with endocarditis, and hearing your story, I just want to quickly interject and tell you, if you weren't present in front of me, there would be no way I would believe that you could still exist, just because I had endocarditis acute, and he gave me the stats, which I don't want to mislead people on, but essentially after so many hours, your percentage decreases of surviving, that my chances were scientifically zero. So during that time, I was blissfully unaware of that, which I think very much helps when you're just optimistic about situations. And I was happy, and I told my parents afterwards, because fortunately they flew over and were with me when I woke up from surgery, and I said to them, and I was incredibly worried about mentioning this, and I was embarrassed, but I said I was absolutely fine with the chances I had, and if I didn't make it, and I felt bad telling them this, but I said, I feel so fortunate for what I've had and been able to do throughout my life. And it was this moment of feeling like it was the end. So you are, you're nostalgic, and you're regaling these moments of happiness and joy throughout your life. And I'm realizing, wow, I think I've got a lifetime of it. So I was content with whatever was going to take place. And that is something that I don't want to lose that memory of, because it's important to, you know, to cherish even the hard times, and then, you know, relish in the positive ones.
Wow. Thank you for sharing all of that. I wish I could reach through the screen and give you a hug.
Oh, I appreciate it.
How has this experience changed your perspective on life?
Oh, completely. I've always been a really detailed person, as you know, throughout my work, and which I'll share some pieces with you. And I think this process has completely changed it's altered my perspective, because I was on a path that was, through university, being incredibly interested in detail to a fault. I was so focused on it, and within my work, but also within my life, I had a scholarship. I knew the course I wanted to take. I knew I wanted to do my master's at Sotheby's following this. And with this sort of scheduling, I didn't see the beauty of abstraction, not in the canvas or within life, because I was just so planned. And then I had this experience, which I could no longer go to Sotheby's despite my attempt, and which is why I'm realizing that sometimes slowing down is so good. I was not fit for it. I escaped, in a certain extent, hospital during I would have 3-hour break between my my medicine, and I decided, hearing from Sotheby's, that I might not be able to continue in my master's. I was silly enough to get on the bus and head to Sotheby's to try to stake my claim in that I wanted to pursue. I was so dedicated that 2 days after I got out of the high dependency ward, I was logging on to my student account and starting my essay that I knew was due, because I was in touch with a fellow student who was dropping by some books for me and that. So I felt like I could continue in this path because I was so dedicated towards it, that I sat on the bus. And in London buses, you've got your priority seating, and I dressed incredibly smartly, sat in the priority seating, and I had a long blazer on that covered my hospital band, and I looked around and I realized the way I appeared, which was healthy and young. I thought, okay, I don't deserve to sit here. So I managed to get myself up during the next stop, and I sat in one of the regular seats. And so I got to Sotheby's, to the door of Sotheby's, which is
After your surgery.
This is 2 weeks after.
Okay.
And yeah, so you can understand I was clearly not in the right mind, but this is truly how dedicated I was towards the path I had set out for myself. And so I got to the door, and which is this grand, large, dark door. And when you have a injury within your chest, so I was cut through my rib cage, or my chest plate, pardon me. That's the fulcrum of all of your energy. So I could not actually get the door open. I was not capable. At this point, if I was trying to turn on the, I realize no one knows what this is. If I was trying to turn on the taps at the hospital, I couldn't even turn the taps because that movement hurt so badly here. But I thought that I would go and be able to open the door. So I waited out front, waited and waited until someone came out so I could get my way in. And naturally I was very fragile, and they looked at me and they said, absolutely not. And I cried more than I did when I heard that I had to go through surgery. I was a bit of a mess from this, because it was really what I saw as my next the next phase of my life. So essentially it was a great experience to have, because it was forcing me to slow down, forcing me to appreciate the abstract life around me, and just more so kind of go with the flow of things, which has inspired my work. Because up until that point, in my art history studies, I was very passionate about the old masters, and I therefore spent all of my time focusing on the old masters that I really enjoyed and employing their techniques into my work, but I really didn't give any thought to any of the modern works, contemporary artists that are doing incredible, innovative things at the moment, and also impressionism is something that I got into right after surgery. So I started reading the books, and I realized that because I had blocked that out and I hadn't been interested in these periods of art, I didn't understand them. And when I started learning more about them and I understood.
Thanks so much for tuning in. We would love to hear your thoughts or questions. Please let us know in the comments and review section, and we'll try to cover it in the next sessions. If you enjoyed this content, please share and subscribe for more episodes. For latest updates, follow us on Facebook and Instagram at Art Focus Exchanges.